afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting Propagandacast with me, your host, ImperialDane, Master of Propaganda, here to deliver to us, and here's another glorious Propagandacast. We are going to be having, of course, another match in Panzergrenadiers 2 beta stuff. It's going to be a 1 versus 1 on Kholodny Ferma, or however I'm supposed to pronounce it. I'm not really good at Russian. I apologize to my Russian viewers, of course, for that one. Sincerely, but sadly, I still don't know how to pronounce or speak Russian. It's going to be a 1 versus 1. It's going to be a bit shorter. It's going to be a lot less, less epic in scale, more shorter, but still should have some good fights, some good things. Of course, I'll be taking a slower pace and perhaps, pause a few times this time around to perhaps point out a few things about the game. So then, who shall be fighting? It shall be ImperialDane, that is me. Yes, there's a slight thing with a lot of patches which all meant that a lot of the replays I had hidden away all of a sudden I can't use because of sync errors, so that all of a sudden meant I had a much smaller pool of replays to work from, and so in that case I went for one of my own recent ones. But ImperialDane fighting for the Ostheer, for the Wehrmacht, for the 16th Panzergrenadier Division. We shall be, of course, watching that. Versus me shall be Johnnycrypton, a rather mysterious player we do see from time to time. He's a pretty decent one, though, from what I understand, playing though as the Russians, taking on the fight for the 79th Rifle Division. And in fact, let's get started. Of course, the thing here to note with Kholodny Ferma is rather how in the north you see a lot more of the victory points, but in the south you do get more resources. It's also a lot less sparse in buildings, whereas there's a few more in the north. There's a sort of change in it, and of course usually you can actually use the southern map to sort of strike into the northern part of the map, or at least cause some problems that way. So some different ways to play this thing out with. Personally, I go with one pioneer squad, then setting up the Kampf infantry company, and then setting up the civil grenadiers. That's rather how I start out with a build. And of course, right there we do have a slight difference in how the Soviets and the Germans play out, since the Soviets don't need any buildings except, of course, what they start out with to get infantry out in the field. And we do see here the conscript infantry squad, which is about 6 man, has about the same health, well, more health in fact, since infantry now has all the same health, but then different other ways to sort of stand out a bit more. They have the Ura ability, which again gives them slightly more fighting power and sprinting ability, but does not necessarily mean they're going to beat some grenadiers right away. And of course, to get them some more stuff, you actually have to upgrade it from the regimental field headquarters, that is Molotovs, anti-tank grenades, and medics. And otherwise, there are doctrines which can provide them with different upgrades as well, different abilities for that matter. You can, for example, get them to repair tanks, vehicles, you can get them submachine guns, or you can actually give them sort of hit the deck ability, which does give them some damage decrease, but on the other hand, they can't move at all. German Grenadiers, on the other hand, start out with the ability to actually upgrade from LMG as soon as they get the munitions for it. They start out with a Panzerfaust, and once you reach tier 2, you can actually get rifle grenades for them. Right there, we see the first engagement up here in the north. Johnnycrypton's combat engineers are already taking up position in this farmhouse, causing a bit of problem, dominating the area. My pioneers can't do much. Troops and buildings are much more resilient in Company Views 2. Perhaps a bit awfully much. Pioneers pulling back. I am sending in some Grenadiers to assist. And there we've got a second engagement going on down south. Grenadiers being engaged by the conscript squad. MG42 team on the way. 2 Grenadiers. MG crew. Johnnycrypton, though, keeps pushing out the conscripts, adding in the Soviet infantry for the motherland and Comrade Stalin. And so far here, the fight is doing alright between the Grenadiers and the conscripts. Although Grenadiers are down to 2 men, the conscripts are down to 3 men, and they're also a bit low on health. Grenadiers in general are a bit more accurate and do more damage than conscripts. Conscripts, on the other hand, have more men, and that way they can function a bit longer with the losses they suffer at all. Plus, of course, they have another ability which you don't see so much used, but which is called Merge, which allows them to basically reinforce another squad with their considerably less expensive troops. So, for example, if you have a much more expensive Guards Infantry or Shock Troop squad, you can use the Merge ability to basically buff that one up and then send the conscripts back home while keeping the other troop at the front line. Right there, we do see some more conscripts moving in to support here. The Grenadiers find themselves a bit overwhelmed. The Pioneers trying to get out of there, and note another conscript squad heading from there. Fighting down here, Grenadiers not doing too well. Johnnycrypton's infantry so far being much more overwhelming in terms of number. The MG42 remaining here to cover this area, lock down a part of the map, while Johnnycrypton's glorious Soviet infantry moves forward in the name of the motherland. Now they're going to squad pushing forwards, or forwards, if that is how you will it. And already here in the first 3 to 4 minutes, we've already had quite a bit of fighting going on. And Johnnycrypton, by the looks of it, does have 4 squads of conscripts, which is quite a solid amount of infantry. Rather follows up on the American play in the first game, that is 4 infantry squads, 4 squads of infantry. And I'm actually getting in more to sort of provide some more fire control in terms of, how I can perhaps try and make it a bit harder for Johnnycrypton too much, but of course also deny him usage of that building, since I'm starting to get a bit tired of him constantly rushing in, of course making it very difficult for my grenadiers or any other sort of troops. I could get a flamethrower, but I'd rather spend those munitions towards an MG and help myself more against Russian conscripts, and then of course use them all to sort of blast them out of their little rat holes in the house. Grenadiers here though, looking again to get overwhelmed by the conscripts. 2 conscript squads plus the engineers inside the building, although they have suffered losses now. Fighting ensues for the fatherland. And there we go. New weapons have been equipped for the grenadiers. The MG42, which is a lot more effective than it was in the first game. That is the LMG upgrade for the grenadiers. It really kills troops if they don't get into cover. Grenadiers are running to a bit of a problem. Conscripts here getting mortared by the Granatenwerfer. An MG42 opening up in the conscripts over there. Spotting up the conscript squad from Johnnycrypton right here. I do focus down both grenadier squads right there. We do see the LMG quickly tears through the conscripts. Another one, 2 more down there. Quickly, the MG upgrade there for the grenadiers really is a powerful one, and really is something most German players should at least consider getting at least 1 upgrade for the squad. Again, it really shows its strength. Conscript squad moving in here for the mortar squad. Really wants vengeance for their brothers lost against that fascist mortar, but there we go. They failed. The pioneers actually pushed them away. And we also see the grenadiers quickly sneak about there. Also, things to note about veterancy. Veterancy 1 always gives a unique ability for whatever unit. In the case of the, for example, most German infantry, it's the mark target ability, which allows them to gain an accuracy bonus against any unit that is marked. It can be a tank, it can be infantry, it can be whatever. So, slight little fun fact here. And note, I'm actually pushing against the center of Johnnycrypton right here. I'm actually provoking him, at least I'm hoping to, sending in a heavily equipped infantry squad with the MG42. My veteran squad going for his munitions point, really putting on some pressure because it's right next to his base, and that usually tends to get a bit of a response from most players because they don't like that. In the meanwhile, this building is getting hammered with rifle grenades, MG fire, and now mortar fire as well, though they are holding out quite nicely. The MG squad right there and the grenadiers here are not doing too well. In fact, 1 MG gunner down. Conscripts pushing up there. Johnnycrypton very intent on holding the north. Again, quite good usage of the building, and perhaps I should have considered actually getting a flamethrower instead to sort that out. Right here, though, we do see the conscript pushing in, and I've, well, largely succeeded in actually provoking a response from him here with only 1 grenadier squad. In that case, call it economics, call it tactics or strategy, and rather basically force him to divert a large amount of troops to a considerably small amount of troops, and thus also a small amount of resources, allowing me to try and overwhelm him other places. And also to take some resources down there because I'm currently strapped for fuel. What are your orders? Mortar so far has not really done a lot of, well, killing, though still gained some veterancy. And of course, the thing to notice here about veterans in Company 2, you don't just gain it from killing, you also gain it from just doing damage, but also taking damage. Though that still needs a bit of tweaking. Pioneers this time, though, making into the house tonight to the Russians, but of course the Russians do have a slightly better option for getting troops out of buildings. They do have the Molotov cocktail. A bit of a thing they learned from the Finns in the Winter War. Grenadiers, they're moving up with their MG. And there we go, conscripts actually going down, the MG crew firing away. And we do see a bit of Inspire ability, which is actually a Soviet ability, works a bit like Fanatism, I suppose, from Company 1. For those that know it, for every man they lose, the rest of the troops gain a bonus, but also troops next to them gain the bonus. Panzergrenadiers equipped with the Sturmgewehrs, pushing north. And we do see a light armoured car out there to support the Panzergrenadier division from its Ausklärung Abteilung. Grenadiers here waiting for some reinforcements. Grenadiers push away there. Johnnycrypton now equipping his troops with flamethrowers. And also note, he's gone for Guards Doctrine, or more specifically the one's called Guards Motor, and he has secured himself the 120mm mortar. That's a big mortar, quite a bit of range, quite a bit of damage. Plus, it only needs one man to crew to technically you can actually get it down to one man. And it can still survive. In this case, though, we do see one conscript running in, so probably see the scout car pushing in pretty heavily. It can be upgraded with an auto cannon, making it the 222 variant. But that's not necessarily really necessary unless you're dealing with light vehicles. So rolling forwards through the snow. Ain't a problem though, and again it's also harder to see in a blizzard. In fact, let me just demonstrate right here. Much lower line of sight. Usually though, infantry is a bit better off, but vehicles again actually have to be careful in the snow in a blizzard because they can be much more easily disabled. And again, in that sense, it's actually more important to use infantry probably during a blizzard. In fact, infantry can get off some nasty surprises if you know what you're doing. And of course, buildings can also provide you some increased line of sight, so buildings can also pay off. But just a quick note there, again, so much to point out. Scout car moving up here against the mortar crew. Also, fun fact, the Germans also used a 120mm mortar. In fact, they copied the Soviet one. And basically just called it Granatenwerfer, and that was it. In fact, several of the other Axis minor nations used the exact same mortar as well. So that was rather sort of how the different armies could affect each other. They'd steal off tactics, strategies, or for that matter, just equipment of each other. The Russians did as well. For example, when the Germans introduced the concept called the Pack Front, the Russians were pretty quick to actually copy it against the Germans and against their own tanks. So that was a start lesson for the Germans right there. But so far, a nice aggression there for Johnnycrypton, but at the same time, he's leaving his center a bit exposed. I mean, I can repeatedly push up here and cut him off because he's leaving most of his infantry actually on the flanks. So he's not quite having as much luck there. Which is not quite working out for him, is it, Heinz? 9 men here. Grenadiers here getting mortar, though. The 120 continuing to be a nuisance, although, of course, now he has to be a bit more careful since he knows I will go after it with a scout car. Also, the Pack 40 rolling out. Continued harassment over here. Conscripts going in there. Minor fighting going up in the north. The conscripts rather realizing they are outgunned in this case and retreat. It's actually time to switch over to Johnnycrypton in this case. And note, passive 120mm squad. He also gets access to Guards Rifle Infantry. Marked vehicle is later on, and he can actually get the T-34-85. As that is rather how some doctrines work in Communist 2. They actually give you different units, but unlike when Communist 2, or the first game where you actually call them in, here they replace other units or have to be built overall. In the case with the T-34-85, it's a replacement unit, so is the mortar, so is the Guards Rifle. So it also means you actually have to make a decision, do I want this or do I want that? Personally, I think that's a pretty cool system, to be honest. As again, it rather forces a player to make decisions, make choices. Do I want this doctrine? Do I want that doctrine? Do I want that unit? But then I also have to give up that unit. So it rather adds a lot to the game. Panzergrenadiers, though, still continue to move out in the north. Technically, though, Panzergrenadiers were not really equipped for this in the larger part. There was only a sort of later war organization for some Panzergrenadier units that actually had the assault rifle. Otherwise, they were large, in fact, even more heavily equipped with MGs than Grenadiers were. Right here, and making a push for the 120mm mortar. I really want to cause some problems there. Swimming in. I'm going to pop off a geballte Ladnung right there. Killing a few, and the Panzergrenadiers move in for the kill. Although the flamethrower nearby is definitely causing a bit of problems. And a conscript squad moving in from the other flank. Making good progress in the south here as well, although with some losses. And a T-34-76 moving in. This apparently crewed by a female crew, which also happened in the war. And generally, though, it will be random if the crew will be female or male for those that apparently are concerned about such matters. T-34-76, not the world's most durable tank, or the most damaging one. In fact, even in the early war, part of the war where it might have been the most effective, usually you'd find the Germans rather stumbling upon the KV-1 more as a bigger problem than the T-34-76. In fact, they pretty much figured out how to deal with that, in particular because the really early variants of it had a tendency of blinding themselves with their own smoke. A Pack 40 here already forcing Johnnycrypton to pull back his Tanguvi, his T-34-76. And actually it's time for the mid-game analysis. Current situation, a bit 50-50 across the map, though I'm holding most of the victory points. He, though, on the other hand, has the armor. He just needs to utilize it in the proper fashion. Of course, the T-34-76 is not really the sort of thing you'd throw at the enemy directly. Usually you want it to sort of work on the flanks, try to sneak in behind enemy lines and use it there to cause a lot of damage. And I'm currently actually trying to sort of do some more damage to it. In fact, I'm panzer fastening it to damage the engine, so I can actually close in with a Pack 40 and try to knock it out that way. That's sort of how I can try and combine things. Of course, Johnnycrypton's really intent on trying to get it out of there before I actually finish it off. Of course, he's still got the 120mm mortar, so he can try and actually do two things. He can try, of course, try and bombard things, or, and of course, smoke here in Company 2 is much more effective, though I'll find a replay that really shows this off later on in the week. But you can actually use it to lay down a smoke cover and actually give your vehicles time to escape. I mean, it's not something you see a lot, except with a few doctrinal abilities, but, I mean, smoke usage can also be used to actually save your own units from a bad engagement. So try and think about that one for the future. Overall, though, for Johnnycrypton, he's suffering a bit. He's down to, in fact, 2 conscript squads. He's suffered some losses, and he's getting a second 120mm mortar at the moment. I don't think that's the right thing. I think he needs some more infantry. I think he needs to put up some pressure, and he needs to sort of focus more on actually gaining some local superiority against my troops, because the problem has been that Johnnycrypton has been largely harassing around, and he's been a bit lax in the other part of the Soviet doctrine, which has always been to using those numbers to quickly isolate a part of the German army and then destroy it. He's not quite achieving that, and that's actually rather giving me an advantage, because my grenadiers in a 1-to-1 fight are much stronger, in particular with the MG42, and of course at veterancy 2 they actually become tougher, apparently due to metals or something, which actually makes bullets a bit harder to penetrate, just a small bit though, but it can actually make a difference. And at veterancy 3 become a lot more accurate, so for example that MG42 is going to become even more nasty. And of course, I mean, that's a bit the difference as well, but with Soviet and German veterancy, I can already talk about it because we've got plenty of time, but the difference between German and Soviet veterancy in some ways, besides their abilities, is actually that for the most part, Soviet veterancy is about giving a lot more damage initially. For example, this tank gets a lot more damage, then later on it becomes a bit more damage resistance. For the Germans, on the other hand, it tends to be about first damage resistance, and then a bit more damage. Same applies to infantry for the larger part. They also become a lot more damaging early on, and can actually feed back into some very nasty things. For example, Soviet infantry with the submachine guns scaling veterancy 2 can actually, if well handled, easily take on Panzergrenadiers with a Sturmgewehr. So some fun things there to consider for players who are perhaps having a bit of trouble with different parts of the Soviet army. And there are certainly players who are struggling, but again, you have to remember you're not playing with the Germans, you're playing with the Russians. You have numbers. Use those numbers effectively. You have speed. Use that speed effectively. What you don't have is the ability to just pull one unit in and just win the war. Neither can the Germans either, but they've got a bit more upfront strength. But let's return to the fight. Oh, right, I forgot about my part of the mid-game analysis. Current situation for me. I'm lacking in armor. On the other hand, I've been able to preserve my force a bit better. I've been able to coordinate things a bit better. And again, I have been able to force him to pull away from the flanks several times. But again, pushing up the center. Again, it's forced him to divert resources to where he's not quite as comfortable. And again, that's sort of part of the thing you have to do as the Germans. You have to provoke the opponent to drag into a scene of fighting. That's to your benefit. In this case, by pushing into the center, I forced him to contract. And again, that gave me a better time of actually doing some damage to him. I should probably, of course, consider getting some armor, a Panzer IV or a Stug, to cause some problems here for the good Sir Johnnycrypton and the 79th Rifle Division. Or was it 78th? Oh well. But now we turn to the fight. And for example, here for the scout, we can actually gain something called infantry awareness, which allows it to sort of keep a track of infantry. Soviet armor, for example, gains the ability to actually secure territories, although at the same time, and they use the ability, they can't shoot their guns, but still, for example, if you then sneak in, do some damage, your infantry is not quite up to it, you can actually use the tank to take the territory for you. So there are a lot of things there, a lot of small, minute ones.
Enemy forces are neutralizing a sector. Mortar team reports ready for combat.
And there we go, the second 120mm mortar. Some players do love to go heavy on those very heavy mortars, though again, artillery is not necessarily actually going to win you in the game. In fact, notice this 120mm mortar has only done 2 kills. I mean, it's got greater range, it's got much more damage, it's really a bitch to fight against, but at the same time, it's not necessarily going to win you the war either. In fact, if you notice, my mortar has actually done 6 kills. Comparatively, actually. And that's actually a smaller mortar with smaller range and less damage. And less area of effect. But again, now using the advantage to push up on the flanks with slightly larger forces, although the larger push is in the south. I'm actually hoping to sneak up here and go for his mortar again. Using some troops to actually immobilize the T-34, while the other troops actually go straight for the mortars, which are currently my actual priority. The T-34 less so, partly because Johnnycrypton is not quite utilizing it fully to my, at least according to me. But there we go, the Grenadiers quickly suffer loss. The T-34 rolls forward. It's 76mm gun, gets off a nice kill right there. Another Grenadier down. Panzerfaust goes off. T-34 scores 7 kills at that stage. One Grenadier makes it out of there. T-34 has suffered a bit of damage. Conscripts, flamethrower engineers. Grenadiers moving forward, trying to get off a rifle grenade, and it does not kill, only wound. That was a bit of a bother. 8 kills from the T-34, but again, engine damage, a bit damaged once more. Again, it's going to not quite be part of any fighting for him right away. Panzergunners pushing forward, 7 kills, veterancy 1. Gaining the marked target ability. T-34 doing what it can to stop the fascist Panzergrenadiers, but they are not quite intent on being stopped. And we soon have a blizzard going in against Scout Car moving up to support, although staying at range, moving behind buildings to make it harder to hit. Going in after that heavy mortar. Vorwärts, Männer. And there we go. Successfully pulling off. T-34-76 moving up. Scout Car in a bit of need of a careful. Pack moving up to actually try and get off some hits on that T-34, and the Pack definitely needs something to spot for it. But the T-34, Johnnycrypton safely gets it out of the fight again, while the Scout Car slowly moves away again, having done the damage it felt was necessary. Minor harassment going up there. The flamethrower pioneers, or engineers, moving in from Johnnycrypton. And also note, deep snow can actually cloak your troops here, although you don't need to be standing still. But another fun thing, although you should of course also be aware that you can actually freeze in the snow if you stay there too long as well, so unless there's a fire nearby. But still, again, another one of those small fun little things of Company Periods 2. In this case, he actually recruited with some of his conscripts.
Combat engineers are standing by.
So pulling back a bit here. 8 kills on the mortar. Troops reinforcing. Support armor corps up, which should eventually give me some armor of some sort. And of course now he can consider getting a T-34-85 with its bigger gun, and thus it's more damage against any German vehicles, or for that matter, infantry.
Are you going to pave the way to Berlin with the frozen corpses of your men?
And of course you have to be careful about not letting your men freeze out in the snow. In this case, the announcer asks if he's the good commander wants to pave the road to Berlin with the frozen bodies of his own men. I really like the voice acting. I mean, it's a bit more subtle than in Company Heroes 1. It's not quite as over the top, but it works in some ways. And there's some really good lines there if you actually pay attention. Some really good ones as well. 120mm moving up here. Needs to be careful though. Firing away. And this now, he's actually spreading them out a bit. He's going to make it a bit hard for me to just rush in, which is actually good. Ah yes, now he actually has the vehicle crew repair training. That's another part of this doctrine. In this case, actually the tanks can self-repair, although they need to be out of combat. You can't do it in the middle of the fight because, in fact, you'll not stop actually having the tank being combat useful. The guns won't fire anything. You can't even move. So after you get spotted while doing this, you can actually be in a bit of trouble. But it's a nice little ability again. This rather allows this doctrine to allow you to be a lot more armor focused, to keep you sort of more rolling. You don't have to be so dependent on engineers. But fighting up here, and note the little thing flashing above there actually means I'm using the relief infantry ability, which is part of the Festung support doctrine. The 16th Panzergrenadiers combing the rear lines for support. MD-42 firing up there, and we do see a Stug 4 rolling out for the Fatherland Grenadiers. MG though went down to the 120mm mortar. Grenadiers here could be overwhelmed. We are seeing a T-34-76 moving up, and we're seeing a T-70 light tank moving up. The T-70, ladies and gentlemen. Stug gets a kill there on the conscript side, who are veteran too, by the way. Mortar gets also a kill. T-70 fires away. Need to be careful. In this case, Johnnycrypton's immediate goal should be flanking the Stug. I mean, I'm being a bit bold here. I'm actually sending in a Stug with very, very little support. I mean, these two tanks can actually easily flank it and destroy the Stug. But currently Johnnycrypton is not doing that, and that's actually giving me the advantage. Although my infantry rather running into a bit of a problem there. Was intent on moving in to support the Stug, but instead I rather got them killed. Or at least one man killed. A tragedy. Pulling back troops here for reinforcements. No, there we go. The Osttruppen, composed of, well, prisoners of war and other volunteers gathered from around the Eastern Front. And more fun fact, they would actually have been more accurate in Company of Hughes 1 instead of the Volksgrenadiers, since those actually fought in Normandy. And there we go, Stug firing away. T-70 already, disabled and knocked out of control. And here we do see that Johnnycrypton is making a huge mistake. He's trying to take on the Stug from the front again. He failed to maneuver about it, and now the Stugs definitely will win. They had the better gun, the better frontal armor than the T-30-76, and there we go, that T-34 is going to go down to the might of the Sturmgeschütz. And this is actually the Stug 3G, and it looks quite nice with the Winter Wars, Whitewash camera actually on it. Making a push up here, scout car supported by Osttruppen. At the same time, we see he's actually gotten the half-track upgraded to the anti-aircraft variant with the 450mm cannons going in after the mortar right here. Osttruppen providing support. And that's actually intending, oh dear, heavy mortar around there. Did a lot of damage there, killing several of the Osttruppen squad. Half-track moving about from the rear, threatening to kill the Osttruppen as they now retreat. Stug moving up to try and clear out the mortar. I forgot all about the half-track right there. That could actually have worked out for the Stug better. Infantry moving up, that's only engineers. Scout car in dire straits, although veterancy does mean it's going to be a bit harder to destroy. I'm a bit worried about the Stug because I'm worried he might be sending in armor. Pack moving up, Panzergrenadiers moving up, Pioneers moving in. Mortar firing away, 11 kills, veterans 1, which gives it the counter-artillery battery. Panzergrenadiers and Pioneers fighting here, getting off a few good kills on the infantry. Pioneers, Engineer squad, I keep messing up those two, damn me. But catching on fire as the flamethrower tank bursts on fire. And you can actually drop a flamethrower now, actually, so fun fact there. Mortar round bounces off the top of the Stug. That's actually a bit of a rarity. 26 kills on the Panzergrenadiers. They're definitely doing that bit for the fatherland. Stug 3 kills, but there really hasn't been much infantry thrown against it. It's largely dealt with, well, whatever armor Johnnycrypton had. Which obviously didn't quite work out because we rather fought to the advantage of the Stug, which was also quite useful at knocking out tanks. In fact, they rather had to point out in the manual to Stug commanders, in fact the guidelines, that he was not to be used exclusively as a tank destroyer. Although it was actually quite common by the later stages of the war to find it in tank destroyer battalions and other such units, in fact companies of other units. But game over, Johnnycrypton has lost. He's down to 120mm mortar. He's down to one squad of conscripts. Comrade Stalin is most upset with Johnnycrypton in this case. And of course, he rather felt like he lost a lot of units early on. But again, I think the problem for him was a bit, several-fold. Partly, he made the mistake again of focusing too much on the flanks and then leaving the center open where I could push in. He did not try to sort of divide my troops up and destroy them as much as I would have probably tried to do as the Soviets had I been playing. And again, I think a really decisive moment was rather up here with the two tanks. He actually allowed my Stug to pull back, then move in, and then he only engaged the Stug from the front. He should have been flanking it with those two tanks. As soon as he was trying to pull back, he should have moved up here and hit the rear like a maniac. He really should have gone for it, and that could actually have beaten the Stug. He could just have rammed it with his T-34-76 and let the T-70 finish it off. So again, that's also another problem. That's definitely one of the more common issues you actually see with some Soviet players. They rather expect the T-34-76, or for most of the armor, to actually take on German armor from the front. It doesn't quite work like that. Also, I think he should have gotten only 110mm mortar, gotten some more armor or some more infantry. He could possibly even try to go for the guards, infantry, use their MGs, use the anti-tank rifles, so that way cause me some problems. That is definitely also an option. For me, well, there are definitely some things to use better. I should have paid a bit more attention here. I probably should not have sent the Osttruppen that far in without much support. There were definitely some fighting up here, which I probably should have pulled away from. I probably should have just said, I don't want to bother with those engineers. I'll just focus on somewhere else on the map where he can't slow me down. But that was a bit of a trap I fell into, and in this case though I was able to rectify it with a few better maneuvers later on in the fight. Again, this one rather again forced him to contract his forces and gave me the chance to use my smaller numbers to my advantage. So there you go, again another Company 2 match, perhaps not the longest one, perhaps not the most action-pumped, but hopefully I was able to provide you with some more clever and deep analysis, perhaps some more details about the game, how some of the things work, and of course, if there's something more specific you want to see, please feel free to post in the comments. You may do want to see some specific piece of Soviet armor. I'll try and provide German armor, some tactics, strategy, and of course I'll also try and get something where smoke and true sight really gets used, because again, smoke and true sight really makes this game so much more amazing than you'd actually think. I mean, really, it sounds small, but it really makes a huge difference. But again, provide feedback in the comments, something you'd like to see, so on. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed this match. If you did, want to subscribe, tell your friends if you aren't already, of course. Share it. If you didn't like it, feedback, send in a replay of your own if you played some Company 2 beta matches. Of course, if you don't, because you can't, head over to Facebook. Currently on the Company 2 page, you can get a free key there, or pre-order, I believe, on Steam, for example, and you'll also get access to the beta there as well. So definitely some ways of getting access to the beta. This is ImperialDane saying cheers and see you tomorrow.